Today on CityCast Chicago, how will the city help its growing homeless population? What could Illinois' new flag look like? And what are the ins and outs for Chicago this year? Producer Michelle Navarro is here with me to break it all down. It's Tuesday, January 7th. I'm Simona Licea in for Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Good morning, Michelle. Welcome back to the mic. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Simone?
I'm doing okay. I know Jacoby's not here, but I do feel like it's worth celebrating the Bears win over the Packers this weekend. I feel like he would want us to acknowledge that they closed out the season with the win, at least after we spent several Tuesdays talking about how terrible they are.
And especially after there was several Tuesdays of you definitely poking fun at him.
Yes.
It's really ironic that the one time he could have probably gloated a little bit, he's not here. So sorry, Jacoby.
More importantly, Michelle, I have a question of debate for you. Do you think it's too late to still be talking about like the new year and New Year's resolutions and all that? Like, are we over it at this point on January 7th?
No, definitely not. I'm 100% a believer of you can do it at any point and any time. I do love the new year just because I think it gives you like that peg, that excuse to actually start anew. But I think the whole month of January is kind of like your brainstorming session. Like, okay, what goals that I was talking about in 2024, like which ones am I actually going to take on? And so I say the whole month you can, stay on the drawing board and figure out which ones you're actually going to do. So I never think it's too late. Are you over it?
No, not at all. I 100% agree. And I think it is totally fair game, which is good because we're going to talk about some New Year's stuff today in this conversation. But first to sort of the biggest story on our radar for the past several days. Obviously, we've been talking about big stories that we're going to be watching in 2025. And here's another one. Last year, the number of people experiencing homelessness increased by 18% across the country, but that number tripled in the city of Chicago, according to the city's annual tally. Michelle, can you give us the exact estimates here and what's driving this increase, particularly in Chicago?
Yeah, so Chicago estimated about 18,836 people experiencing homelessness last year. Compared to 6,139 in 2023. Federal officials say in the new report that it's a lack of affordable housing, natural disasters, and of course the increase in migrants was kind of behind this big surge. Other local groups estimate that more than 76,000 Chicagoans experienced homelessness throughout 2024, saying that the official tally is kind of an underestimate because of the way people are counted.
Right. So that federal report that you're talking about comes from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which oversees what's called a point-in-time count, which is actually going to be happening later this month. And it happens in cities across the country. And this count is sort of the official census of people experiencing homelessness. It's the way that, localities report to the federal government of like, hey, here's how many people are experiencing homelessness. Therefore, you should give us this amount of money in, federal grants or what have you, in order to support that population. However, the way that count is done is seriously flawed in a lot of ways, right? The big bulk of it is sort of taken on by volunteers who kind of fan out on one night in January. So number one, it is quite literally a point in time count. You're only counting people that you can see, that you can sort of visibly confirm.
That you can come across.
Exactly. And you are counting them on likely one of the coldest nights of the year, when we know that, especially in a place like Chicago, the population of people who are living outside, who are living in tents, is going to fluctuate depending on the weather, right? We're probably going to see a lot more of those tents out in the summer. And then, those numbers are also sort of augmented by what shelters can provide about who's staying in shelters. But it doesn't count, for example, people who are doubled up in homes, people who are couch surfing, to what degree they're able to count people living in, RVs or cars, right? It really, really varies. And so it's just number one, that number overall is likely going to be an underestimate from that official tally. But even with that, we're still seeing this huge increase in Chicago, triple the number between 2023 and 2024, largely driven by, this influx of migrants who have been brought to the city, right? Largely who have been bussed in from states along the border. Michelle, I think one thing that were watching going into the end of last year was the city had decided to, essentially end its migrant shelters, the shelters that had stood up specifically to shelter this population as it seeks to sort of merge its systems. What's the latest on that? Where kind of are we, and what is sort of the plan there? Can you remind us?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, that was kind of announced last October. Mayor Brandon Johnson kind of said that they wanted to close these like newly arrival migrant shelters, and put this all under one system. And so starting this month, 3 city run and 2 state run migrant shelters will remain open, but becoming part of the One System initiative. And so these shelters will now be intended for all people experiencing homelessness. There has been a number of solutions trying to, address uh, this issue aside from, getting all the shelters into one system. If we look back to last March, Mayor Johnson and housing advocates addressed this lack of affordable housing through the Bring Chicago Home referendum, which we saw fail in March. As a reminder, this could have used real estate transfer tax on high-end housing to bring in funds to address homelessness.
Yeah, I want to just stay on the revenue point really quick, because I think
Mhm.
this is a key element and a key challenge of the Johnson administration, right? When this referendum failed in March, this was the big, pretty much the big solution, creating a dedicated revenue source to fund affordable housing. And it didn't happen. It just had a really fierce opposition, from the real estate business community, from the real estate industry. And I will be curious to see, and there's some reporting out from our colleagues at the Tribune this week about, remember that plan to let tax increment finance districts expire to fund this big bond project, right? And this was going to
Right.
fund a bunch of affordable housing. Well, those tax increment finance districts, TIF districts, which are essentially specialized tax districts that allow property taxes to be used only in those districts. Some of those have already expired. That was part of the budget that was approved late last year. And more of those are set to expire this year. And we are approaching what some people are calling the TIF cliff. And so we'll be curious to see how fast the city can actually act on that stuff. But yeah, I think financing is going to be huge when we talk about, actually addressing the problem of homelessness in Chicago.
Right. And another thing I think that we've seen the last couple months is kind of backlash towards the Chicago Housing Authority for letting hundreds of units throughout the city sit empty. And so we've been seeing protests. They've even faced some challenges with leadership when we saw former CEO Tracy Scott step down.
We now have a new interim leader in Angela Herlock, but that is another sort of sister agency that I think we'll be watching closely in 2025 to see if there are, with new leadership changes, does that mean we have fewer vacant sites?
We're even seeing, some solutions through the Chicago Teachers Union, who proposed measures dedicated to housing, helping CPS families get connected to housing resources. They're saying, that they're definitely feeling the impact in their schools. One measure that they're proposing calls for the city, CPS, and the CTU to kind of collaborate in providing rental assistance to about 20,000 CPS families. And so they're really trying to, again, they're really trying to land a deal, like land on a contract in general before the partly elected school board is seated on January 15th.
Which makes sense because, right, Chicago Public Schools, I think, has felt the effect of particularly the growth in the new arrival population very, very acutely, right? We saw that CPS's enrollment for the first time in many years went up, in part because of this influx of new students. However, it's an influx of high need students, and we know that public schools are often the sort of first place for resources when students are in need. And it's certainly something that the Chicago Teachers Union knows and is sort of advocating for. Again, the big question on that contract is just the payment and the finances, and
Right.
where is that money going to come from? Obviously this is felt especially acutely right now as we have this cold weather front kind of that came in last night, snow and low temperatures. And I believe that warming centers are currently open as they are when the weather is below freezing.
Yeah, so the city put out a map of warming centers throughout the Chicago area. So these are, of course, places you can stay and stay warm. Most of them are open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but there are some across the city that are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And as we know, in Chicago, there's not a more cold time than the evening where weather can drop to below zero. And so it begs the question of where can people go when they're not open? Can people, get checked in, get to these shelters, now that it's a larger shelter system? Is it allowing for people to find home at night, despite warming centers being open during the day?
Voting is set to open this month on a new Illinois state flag. The Flag Commission released 10 finalists after accepting some 5,000 submissions. This is an effort to update Illinois state flag, which is, as one flag expert we interviewed called it, just a seal on a bed sheet. It's not all that interesting, not all that compelling, not super recognizable, except for the fact that the word Illinois is under it. Michelle, of the finalists, which include those 10 final submissions, in addition to the current flag, the centennial flag, and the sesquicentennial flag that were previously designed, which one is your favorite?
Number 2246 is like the sun rising. There's like a light blue background, and then there's 21 green stripes, so it kind of looks like a horizon, like a plane. And then it has 3 white stars above the sun that's rising. And I just think it's like aesthetically pleasing, and I love the stripes and the stars because it reminds me, and also like the light blue. It's not exactly the Chicago flag light, like
No,
baby
it's
blue,
not.
but
No.
it is a blue, like a light blue. And I do like that it kind of looks like Chicago's flag, but it's also its own thing. I mean, we know that Illinois is just like a lot of farmland, it's a lot of plains. And so I just feel like it does speak to the overall landscape of Illinois, but it does kind of takes influence from Chicago's flag, which I personally really like.
So we polled Hey Chicago readers about which one, sort of ahead of the official voting opening up, about which one that they liked, and they were pretty evenly split. But that flag did have the most votes. They got 13% of the vote. And according to the designer, those 21 green stripes that you describe represent Illinois as the 21st state, and also because they kind of look like lines of crops almost,
Mm-hmm,
and so they sort of
mm-hmm.
reflect the state's agricultural roots. And those 3 6-pointed stars represent the state's 3 regions: northern, central, and southern. And the fact that it creates 18 points represents that Illinois was founded in 1818. This one is becoming more and more compelling the more that I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
My only issue with it is the yellow, green, and blue, those particular shades of green and blue in particular, just feel very primary school to me. Like it's
I see what
giving
you mean.
it's giving like I'm learning my colors for the first time. You know what I mean? Like I just would have liked maybe a deeper, more rich royal blue, perhaps. And
I see. Be a little more elegant. You want your colors for some more elegance, more elegance in there.
Yeah, I think so. I would say that my favorite personally, mostly because I've been calling for this for years, since they first announced that they were considering studying, you
Mm-hmm.
know, creating a new flag. I love number 4321, which is the monarch butterfly flag. It's an orange monarch butterfly surrounded by 21 stars on a dark blue background. The monarch butterfly is not only is it the state insect of Illinois, I just think it is such a beautiful symbol of it's a beautiful symbol of migration. It's a beautiful symbol of rebirth and growth. Orange is such a key color for Illinois.
The color of the monarch butterfly.
And of course, the color of the monarch butterfly. The designer explains that the orange represents success, determination, and creativity, and the blue stands for trust, loyalty, sincerity, and strength. People have pointed out to me when I have told them that I have advocated for a monarch butterfly flag that it would be a real shame if the monarch butterfly does indeed go extinct at any point in our lifetimes. It is endangered. And so that is maybe could be a bit of a bittersweet tribute. But I don't know. There's something about it. I just think it's super unique. I think to me is identifiable as Illinois. I don't know how identifiable it is to people outside of Illinois. But I do really like it.
I think it's really pretty too. My only critique of it is that, and I am not shading U of I at all, but the blue and the orange just screams U of I to me.
There are a few flags that kind of
a lot of the flags
that.
Yes, and that's why I was like, they're not my favorite. I think this flag would be better if maybe the background was white, or if they incorporated another color, or maybe the stars was just to add a third color in there to kind of so it's just not blue and orange. It's also kind of giving bears, nothing wrong with that, but it's just I kind of wanted something just another little pizzazz in there.
I get that. Our producers also reminding us that 7 states have the monarch butterfly as their state insect, which I did not know.
I didn't know that. I don't feel that original anymore.
I know that makes me sad. I wish that was a fact I didn't know. So the way this is going to work, like I said, there were over 5,000 submissions. They're going to open this up to a vote. Illinoisans can, make their voices heard on which one they think is the best. But ultimately, it's going to be this flag commission that's going to make a recommendation to the General Assembly, both on whether or not the flag should be changed at all. And if so, maybe which designs they think should kind of move forward. And so I will be interested to see. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor because, as we've talked about on the show before, I think compared to the Chicago flag, the Illinois flag is a little forgettable. And I think that's a shame. I think our symbols, if they don't have to be forgettable, don't make them forgettable, So like I said at the top of this conversation, I think talking about the new year is still fair game. And I think that will be true throughout the month of January. And that makes it a great time to participate in some kind of internet trend. This time I'm talking about making an ins and outs list for Chicago in 2025. In case you missed it, this is the trend where you make a list of ins and outs, what's in, what's out for this year. And we're going to do it for Chicago. Michelle, what's on your outs list? Let's start there.
So I know this is looking quite ahead, but overly packed street fest. We talked last year with reporters on, there was an investigation about how permits were not calculating correctly, estimating how many people would attend Street Fest, which I think was largely, the reason why so many people complained about how difficult it was to get through these Street Fests, how long lines were at food vendors and drink vendors, and just how uncomfortable it was overall. And so if it is overly packed, I'm just going to turn around and go home, which sucks because they're so fun and it's such an essential Chicago summer thing to do, and it's just such a shame that a lot of people either are going to have to miss out because they don't want to be in packed streets.
Yeah, it's interesting because as part of that reporting that you mentioned, it's sort of a delicate balance, right? Because organizers obviously, want lots of people to come and pay the suggested donations and essentially make it worthwhile
Right.
and so that they can break even, so that they can throw this festival again. You know what I mean? Like these festivals cost a lot of money to put on.
And also, they don't want to make all this room, make all this space, and then make these fests look empty,
Right.
not have vendors get their return back on, the amount of materials and food and supply that they're bringing in. And so I totally understand that it's difficult to calculate. It just, I think last summer, if anything, it was a good lesson to be like, okay, people are showing up. This kind of like slow return from pandemic is kind of done, and like
Yeah.
summer is in full swing again.
It was that's exactly what I was going to say. Is I feel like, obviously in 2020, but also in 2021, 2022, and even everything was a little less crowded than normal. And it was kind of nice, but it was like, it was very sort of like you were on the edge of like how you felt about different things. 2024, it was like, everyone's back. We're all going out. We're all doing it. And we're all doing it at the same time. And I was just like, we could pull back a little bit. Like, what if we just just did a little less? So I'm with you on that one. My big out for 2025, I think trying to recreate the rat hole or some kind of viral moment, that effort, that's out in 2025. I'm over it.
I agree.
Toward the end of 2024, there was a story about like a piece of cheese in a window that had a description, and there was I saw like 3 different headlines that were like, "Is this Chicago's new rat hole?" No, it's not. Stop trying to make fetch happen. We're done. If something good, we as denizens of the internet, if something lovely and interesting and weird comes across our feed, we accept it. But we don't need to make it happen.
I like what you said there. I totally agree. Just because, when something interesting and cool happens, it will naturally, progress into this symbol that we all know and love or hate. So yeah, I'm totally on that one. Another one that I don't even really think I need to explain, but spending more than $16 on a cocktail. Every time I've spent more than $16 on a cocktail, it was good, probably. Like, it was probably very delicious and very well done, but I'm just like, I don't need that.
No, I'm with you there. Yeah, if you're asking me to spend more than $16, there better be an ingredient in there that is really, really compelling. I was just at Koval Distillery up here in Ravenswood, and they a great little spot, great vibes, but they also do tasting flights, which are normally they're normally a little pricier because you get
More.
3 things, but these were really, really well priced. I think we did a liqueur flight that was like $13 and a whiskey flight that was like $15. So that's like, 1.5 cocktails for the price of what would normally be 1 cocktail at another bar.
Right.
So just a little tip from me to you that I just discovered.
My last out is the bystander effect, because there has been I'm thinking about one particular place that really just left I was just in so much shock. And so there's Quesabirria Jalisco. This is a birreria in Pilsen, right on 18th Street. And there was an attempted robbery that happened. This was back in October. And the robbery happened in the kitchen, and the owner had to fight. The owner ended up fighting off the robbery, so everything was fine. I don't think no one was severely injured. I think he maybe had just some injury, but the whole ordeal was caught on camera. Like, customers who were sitting in the restaurant and eating while this was happening ran to the kitchen, not to help this poor owner, not to help this owner, but to record the incident.
Oof.
And the owner was interviewed by CBS, and then he said, quote, "We're wrestling, I had him in headlock. I look up, all my customers, everyone is frozen with their phones in hand. People were recording the attack." And I'm like, how disrespectful to be eating at this man's quesabirria spot, which, if you know birria is delicious, and it is a privilege to have delicious birria. And to be in this man's restaurant, he had just fed you, and you're watching him get robbed. I felt so bad for this man. I was like, oh my goodness. It's just like, I was just so ashamed for a
Well,
second.
and even not just like, right, there's various ways to, intervene, right? Obviously, you don't need to jump into a conflict,
Right,
right? Like,
right.
that's
You
not
don't.
something, but like, certainly finding help in some other way, right? To help
Exactly.
out, or at least like, I don't know, do something, right? That instinct to record rather than to help. I agree. I could definitely see. I would love to see that go on the way out in 2025. Michelle, what about some ins? What's in for 2025?
Okay. More coat checks slash coat hangers everywhere. I am sick. Okay, shout out to all the places that already have all the venues and all the bars and restaurants that have, coat hangers by your table or just have coat hangers spread out around.
Something to hang your purse on at the bar.
Something.
Something.
Yeah, underneath the bar hooks. Like if you are a bar and you don't have hooks underneath and you are in Chicago, please install those. I'm sure they're not that much. Go to Home Depot, go somewhere, install them. It's not that bad. Or even coat checks. I'll pay. Like I'll pay $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 for my coat to get checked. Because when I pop out, I am in a big fluffy coat. I am in a fur coat. I am in a long, thick parka. I am in something and I do not want to be holding it. I don't want to leave it on my chair so that the bottom of it touches the floor. And, so just please, just have more coat checks, more coat hangers. People are going to use them. People are going to be more willing to go knowing that it's cold outside and they have somewhere safe to put their coat.
I think that's a great one. Something that is in for me, and this is more of a manifestation. I think I don't know if it's actually happening, but I think early dance events. And like, I don't know if you've seen, there's been some coverage of the Early Birds Club, which is sort of a club for women. They'll put on events now kind of across the country. But they put on these events that start at 6 p.m. and end at 10 p.m. But they're like
Amazing.
club dance events, right? You go out, you go dancing and like have a bunch of fun. I am here for this. I am here for this for a number of reasons. Number one, I have a bedtime. I don't know about the rest of you, but I certainly do. And I don't like it when I don't get to bed on time. I hate having to wait until 10 p.m., 11 p.m. for the crowd to get there. It really bothers me. And number three, I think when it gets darker earlier, we should adjust our activities accordingly. You know what I mean? Like if it's already getting darker earlier, it feels like midnight at 7 p.m. So let's just get midnight vibes at 7 p.m. And so I'm manifesting this for other Chicago venues to do some early bird events because I think that would be fun. So that's an in for me in 2025.
I guess my only other in is someone wins something.
Are you talking about like in sports?
Yeah, or just anyone that represents Chicago. Like I think we really need a win.
Yeah.
Last year, we just mentioned kind of like how the whole we're just kind of a little broke right now. And the spirit of Chicago is always going to be the spirit of Chicago, but the Bears have been letting us down. Of course, the Sox broke a record. We're not going to talk about which one. And so someone winning something, and again, it don't even have to be sports at this point. Like I'm desperate. Like a Chicago artist like kind of comes up with a beautiful record or an album or just something this year that really kind of brings us all together again. Like we need something. Maybe a sports championship. Maybe it don't even gotta be all that. Maybe it has to be something else. But I just want us to win.
I'm with you. I would love to see that in 2025. My last in is a secret plug. I think it will be in 2025 to become a CityCast Chicago member. I'm calling it now. It's gonna be the hot new trend of 2025. Of course, being a CityCast Chicago member means supporting us here at CityCast. It means paying a little bit every month so that we can keep making this show and keep putting out our newsletter, Hey Chicago. You can do it at membership.citycast.fm. We had lots of people become new members in 2024, which we're so grateful for. We love having you with us. And you can join them.
And have we had members join 2025? Have we had any alerts?
I don't think so. You could be the first member of 2025. You could do it right now. Yeah. You would just get that special that special feeling of being the first one.
And you would check out one of my ins. Like you would check the box of winning something because we won your heart.
Yeah. We would celebrate you.
We would celebrate it.
I don't know if the whole city of Chicago will,
but
we will.
Would.
We would. And that's what matters. Michelle, thanks so much again for hanging out with me today and talking the news.
Thanks, Simone.
And some good news to get you through. Some of you may know that I take a painting class up here in Edgewater, and it's good news for me that that's going to be starting up again soon. But the good news for you is that our newsletter editor, Sydney Madden, has put together a list of some of the best art classes in the city, in case that's one of your New Year's resolutions. She's got links to painting, drawing, ceramics. I think she's got some performance stuff in there too, if you want to check that out. You can also find links to our guides to Chicago's best book clubs, workouts, language lessons, how to take care of your plants. We've pretty much got your 2025 goals covered. You can find it all at chicago.citycast.fm. We'll be back here at the same time tomorrow, and I hope you'll join us. We'll talk to you then.